This last video for your Module 3 test, we are going to solve these inequalities by using a graph. What we are looking at here is the x minus 4, x plus 2. It wants to know where that is less than 0. 0 is going to be your x-axis. This one is nice because it's already in its factored form for me. The factors are x minus 4, I'll set that equal to 0, and x plus 2, set that equal to 0, and solve them for x. So I would add the 4 to both sides here, so x equals 4. And then I would subtract 2 from both sides here to get x equals negative 2. So those are the zeros of the function, which are their x-intercepts. So at positive 4 and negative 2. Now, also, since this is not in factored form, let's think about what kind of graph this is going to be. If I did FOIL this together, I would end up with positive x squared, which means it's going to be a parabola, and it'll be right side up since it's a positive x squared. So here is what I am looking at. If it wants to know where this graph is less than 0, this is 0. So it's talking about this part here that is below that. So where does it start being below 0? Right here at that negative 2, and it stays below 0 until it gets to 4. So that is your interval that it is below 0. We do want to put parentheses around that because it wants to know where it is less than 0 but not equal to 0. So not equal to those points, just below them. All right, this is asking me the same kind of question, but it's not in its factored form yet. So I am going to factor this x squared minus 16x plus 60 and see where that is greater than 0 this time. X and x for x squared. Now I have to multiply to equal positive 60. At the same time, I have to add to negative 16, which is going to be a negative 10 and a negative 6. These are going to give me the x-intercepts. Set them equal to 0, solve them for x by adding 10s here. So x equals 10, add 6s here, so x equals 6. So those are going to be my x-intercepts. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So at positive 10 and positive 6, now my x squared is positive, so it's a parabola opening upwards. Now it wants to know where it is greater than 0. So once again, these points are not included. They should be open. It wants to talk about this interval and that interval. So remember, when we're reading a graph, coming in from the left and going to the right. So the first thing I'm going to do is start at negative infinity, and it is above the x-axis until it gets to 6. Then it goes below for a little bit, and then in union with, when it starts to be above again, it is at 10. And it stays above forever to infinity. All right, on this next one, I have 121 minus x squared is less than or equal to 0. I can factor this, but I can remember you can always find factors or zeros if it's squared by going to your quad calculator and putting in your A, B, and C. Your A is in front of x squared, so it'll be a -1. Your B is in front of x. Since there's not an x, that would be 0. And C is your constant, which is 121. So that's what I'm going to put in my quad calculator. So again, in my quad calculator, I will put in 1, 0, oh, excuse me, A was -1, B was 0, and C was 121. So you'll notice that the zeros that it gave me are -11 and +11. So those are going to be your x-intercepts. So -11 and +11. So there's your x-intercepts. Now look at the x squared. This time it is negative, which means this parabola actually opens upside down, and it wants to know where it is less than or equal to 0. Less than is below. So we are talking about those two intervals. Again, coming in from -infinity to +infinity. The first time we run into the graph is at this, coming in from here, it's below 0 until it gets to -11. So from -infinity to -11, now this -11, since it's less than or equal to, I want to include that -11 in what I'm talking about, so it gets a bracket. In union with, then it goes above the x-axis until it gets to +11. So it also gets a bracket, and then it stays below 0 for the rest of the graph to +infinity. All right, last one. I have x squared plus 13 is less than 2x. So I do notice that it is quad again, which means I can put that in my quad calculator. But before I do that, I need to have it where the 2x needs to come to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. So now I've got x squared minus 2x plus 13. It wants to know where that is less than 0. So my A, B, and C that I'm going to put in my quad calculator are 1, -2, and +13. So 1, -2, and +13. When I calculate this, you'll notice that your answer has I's in it. You cannot put a point on the x-axis if your answer has an I in it, because that's not a real number. So since that is the case, your answer, when you're looking at this, right next to the word more is that symbol there. That is the null set. There is not an interval that is going to be less than 0, because I can't put those x-intercepts on there and find what is below the x-axis.